Welcome into the Gaming Discourse. I am Tyler Frater alongside Richard De La Cruz.
Hello, hello.
And Chief Engineer Lieutenant Commander Connor Frater, who is not here today. It is April 15th, 2021. Follow us on Twitter and Facebook at The Gaming Discourse. Go to our YouTube channel, YouTube/Gaming Discourse. We post new videos. Alien Isolation video is the latest video on there. I have a new review of Paradise Lost, which should be done sometime in the next couple days, maybe over the weekend. It's not going to be very long. Paradise Lost is only about a 5-hour game.
Okay.
So it's already a really short game, and it's also a narrative-driven, first-person narrative, so there's not like a whole lot of mechanics to talk about. It's going to be like a 500-word, like a real quick,
Oh, that is quick, man.
Yeah,
wow.
real quick review, because there's just not a whole lot to and I try to do reviews without spoiling a whole bunch of story stuff. And I don't want to get into like my philosophy behind that, but yeah, so it's kind of it's going to be really short, but I think it effectively covers a lot of my thoughts on it. And I'm not sure I'm going to talk about it too much more here. But anyway, since I'm talking about games, I will take the reins first and discuss what I've been playing, and then we'll throw it to you. So yeah, Paradise Lost, the video game, not the poem, the epic poem by John Milton. But Paradise Lost, the video game, played through again, and I wish I could spoil things about it, but it's already a short enough game that spoiling some story elements sort of spoils the entire game, which is what makes it difficult. But I came away enjoying it with some caveats and also some things I didn't like so much. So there, how's that for being super vague?
Yeah, there you
go. But the review will say a little bit more, and like I said, hopefully next couple days I'll have that out. The other game that I've played a little bit more of is Witcher 3. So I'm doing my Witcher 3 hardest difficulty possible, whatever, playthrough, because I wanted something, just sort of a single player game to kill some time. And it's one thing to play through a game that's this big again, right? Because there's so much stuff, things that you may not have noticed before, or you experience things in different orders, or you experience a moment in a 50-hour story. In the middle of that 50-hour story, you experience this moment that you've just completely forgotten about, and like blows you away all over again. As opposed to like shorter games, which are just as good, but like shorter games where it's sort of easier to remember a lot of things, and also it's not as, the storyline isn't as malleable, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you play through the Uncharted's, it's like the story beats are going to hit at the same time. Every single subplot you're going to be introduced to, because there's not a whole lot of side quests or anything like that. I'm obviously not arguing that open world non-linear storytelling is superior. I don't believe that, but it's just interesting to experience that whole thing over again. Playing The Witcher on the hardest difficulty possible, I think, really makes it fantastic, because there are some fights that are so freaking difficult that it got me digging into Geralt's bag of, okay, what toxins can I use? What other techniques can I do here? How can I respec or throw different spells on to help Geralt out? So like not respecking, but sort of just retooling the spells that he's casting to help out with the battle, and that's so much fun. Because the combat is it just strikes a fantastic balance between being difficult and being like Dark Souls difficult, where a couple hits and you're dead, you make a mistake here and you die. It is really, really great to experience that again. The storyline, like experiencing Witcher again, to see like Vesemir and all these other characters is great. I feel like some elements of the plot and some characterizations aren't going to age well, not because they're offensive, Because I think they imply certain things that maybe in like 10 or 15 years people aren't going to like as much. I want to give an example. Like I think Yennefer's characterization is really interesting because there aren't any perhaps female characters in video games that are as headstrong as Yennefer. But Yennefer, but Yennefer also crosses a line into not evil, but definitely inconsiderate, rude, and that part of her personality is what makes her one an enjoyable character to watch, but also a tough character to idolize. And by idolize, I mean in the same way that we may think, oh, this character is good or this character is bad. Yennefer really muddies the water there because a lot of the things she does is is wrong or
by any means necessary.
Yeah. And it's reflected in the way that she dresses, right? She's black and white, so it's my way or the highway kind of an attitude. So I really enjoy seeing a character like that because you don't get a character that clashes with your own sort of moral sensibilities. At least I can't think of too many characters that do that in video games outside of as consistently as Yennefer. And of course, also Yennefer is the main love interest of Geralt, which creates some interesting relationship dynamics. Because Geralt, I think, while you can tweak Geralt's personality here and there, I think he's much more altruistic. He's much more listen, I just want to help people. I don't want to offend anybody. I don't want to take sides. There are certain political implications that are interesting, but that sort of grinds against Yennefer's existence as a hammer, while Geralt is a scalpel, right? But anyway, it is enjoyable to watch them on the screen at the same time. There's one more thing I wanted to mention about Witcher. Oh, the other thing is, when I first played through Witcher, I just could not give a crap about Gwent.
Oh, right, yeah.
I tried it a few times. I lost. Gwent is like really hard at the beginning because all your cards are just absolute trash.
Yeah.
So it's just like, and at some point I'm just like, you know what? At some point when I first played it, I just didn't care anymore. I was like, okay, I'm just not doing the whole Gwent subplot. Like, I don't care. And in this one, for whatever reason, now in this way, I have the game turned down to easy because there's a Gwent difficulty level. I have that on easy.
Oh, okay.
Because I just don't care about Gwent. Give me the story, give me the combat. Gwent was something I didn't care about. But I don't know why, but I guess it's maybe because there's somewhere deep in my psyche I was scarred when I first played, and now it's like I'm getting revenge all those years ago for being beaten at Gwent. But
yeah, I remember when they teach you how to play Gwent. After my first match, I did another one, and I was like, oh, actually, okay, that's pretty fun. So I'll come back to that when I'm ready. And then I just did not. I did not. So, and it's so cool that it got popular enough to spin off into its own title and whatnot. But yeah, I forget about Gwent sometimes.
Yeah, Gwent is odd in the game. Not only does it represent a strange in-universe, like, weird fourth wall breaking, because like it's weird to think that people like these hardened criminals are like, oh yeah, I'm gonna play a Geralt of Rivia card. Oh wait, that's you. So there's
elbowing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Oh, you're playing with Dijkstra, who is like this super spy, and he plays a card of himself. So obviously there's I think the idea. There's supposed to be a representation that the thing you're seeing during the Gwent game is not necessarily the way the characters in the world perceive it, right? I think there's supposed to be something like that, but even then, characters like Zoltan and Dijkstra call cards by their characters' names, so I don't know how to rationalize all that, but it's strange nonetheless. But anyway, so played through the game the first time, could not give a crap about Gwent. I got beat a couple times, and I was like, you know what? Combat's excellent. It's that Pro ZD video where he's like, find all the eggs. Are you familiar with Pro ZD?
Yes,
It's
of course, yes.
find all
Big
the
fan.
eggs, and he's like, I'm gonna return to the combat, which is excellent. I don't want to find these eggs. It's the same exact thing where it's like, hey Geralt, can you find me a card? It's like, no, I'm gonna go kill this Necker over here and complete this contract because that's fun. Anyway, so for whatever reason, I've gotten really into it, and I've built up one of my decks, and it's hilarious kind of because I'm doing that super video gamey thing where I get to a point in the story and it's like, oh God, we gotta save Ciri. We've got like 4 hours left until the universe ends. And I'm just like, you got it. And then I go to Novigrad, hey, you want to play some cards? And I spend like the next 3 hours going through Gwent tournaments.
Always goes back to that Mass Effect meme. I don't have time to talk to the press. You're dancing in the nightclub.
Exactly. It's the wonderful world of video games. But anyway, so that's... I don't think I've been playing really much anything else that I want to discuss right now. So I'll throw it over to you. What's you been playing?
Not much else. I am still... I don't want to say trudging through Pathless, but I am finishing up that game. I think actually tonight, after we're done, I think I will be finished with it. I just have to head to the final boss, and that's it. And I'm gonna get ready to start writing the review and try to get that done, I hope. But the Pathless has been a really, really fun game, and I like a lot of aspects about it. And there are some things I don't want to say I don't like, but I wonder. I have guesses as to why they chose to design the game this way. There is no map whatsoever. And it is you have open areas to go through, and there are collectibles, which you have a kind of like a sort of eagle vision to kind of sense where they are. It's like, oh, there's definitely something in that building, so go over there. It'll flash bright red. Mm-hmm. And so, okay, well, there's something over there. Let me go get it. And you will come across fallen soldiers that have orbs floating in front of them, kind of like a spiritual essence of some sort. And you can go up to them and speak to it. And it's essentially their last thought before passing. And there's a lot of interesting tidbits in the game. It is definitely not a game that spoon feeds you any type of story. And it's even tough to kind of get a grasp on what the story is. There's obvious good, evil, gods, humans, and stuff like that. But a lot of the more interesting aspects come from the thought process of the final moments of these soldiers. And you have soldiers who were friends that are now enemies due to an evil presence that has taken over some of these soldiers, and you have some friends that have gone crazy and their last thought is nothing but laughing or screaming, and the other thought process of the person of the friend would ponder why their comrade is acting this way and whatnot. So I think there's lots of interesting tidbits to the world that they give you, but there's nothing concrete to lead you through the game other than there's an evil, there are gods you have to free, and then that's it. But I like the approach that they took with it. I think that through that, though, it would leave some people feeling a bit empty. Which is fine because that's not the game's strong suit. I think the game's strong suit is the way it kind of gives you this world to kind of just explore. And that's what you do most of the game. You're going from point A to point B. There is no... in my review that I plan to write, I'm going to make a lot of comparisons to Shadow of the Colossus.
Yeah.
Because there is 5 bosses, and they're big monstrosities, and there's nothing else in between. but going from A to B or solving puzzles, unlocking things, releasing spirits of some sort, and then fighting these monsters. So it's very much like Shadow of the Colossus, and it's very lonely. The game is lonely.
Mm-hmm.
It's just you and the seagull. But I like it a lot. I like it a lot. And the boss fights, when you get to them, are so cool. Very easy, but they're very flashy and they're very visually beautiful to look at. But I've enjoyed the time that I've had with the game. And I think it will be another one. You'll probably laugh when I say it. I think it'll be another one that I'm going to platinum.
Oh, nice.
To get everything.
Awesome.
Yeah, it's not the only thing that's hard. That would be hard about it is finding all of the collectibles. Because, like I said, there's no tracker, and there's no map. So to find them is just kind of like, is that shiny spot over there what I need? And then go over there and see if it's what it is. But beyond that, yeah, I haven't been playing anything else. I'm kind of eyeing what I'm going to do next on my games. I'm still got to go through Immortal, but we also have, which I don't know. I don't think we'll talk about the Resident Evil 8 demo, which will be coming out in 2 days here. I have Yakuza. There's so many games. It's drowning in them. We're drowning in them. So, but yeah, that's it. Just the Pathless is what I've been playing.
Shadow of the Colossus is a game that I tried. It was I think there was an HD remake for the PS3, correct?
Yes, there was one, and then there was a full-on remake for PS4.
Yeah. For whatever reason, I couldn't stand it. Like, I really disliked it. I think I want to maybe play through it again one day and try it out. I think it's just because I don't know, I was just an idiot or something. That's probably the best explanation. But because it really is one of the more unique video games ever made. Like, I don't know of too many things. Like, there've probably been, like, there's definitely Pray to the Gods is another one that that was made inspired by Shadow of the Colossus. So it's not like Shadow of the Colossus is the only game ever to try the things that it does, but it's definitely not like a huge genre or a kind that or a kind of style or a kind of mechanical foundation that a lot of things follow, right? Which I think there's something to be said about that. Which is and it makes it really interesting and really unique. And it's interesting that you say that the game is lonely, that the Pathless is lonely, because it feels like there have been, maybe there's always been these kinds of games, but really in the last few years, it feels like the lonely game has sort of become, you know, whether it's No Man's Sky or
its own genre.
Or Death Stranding, right? Games that sort of try to put you into this contemplative, like, you're out crossing these vast expanses. Elite Dangerous is a little like that, but you have to exit the bubble.
Was Soma like that?
No. Soma's a horror game.
Not Soma.
But there is there is like an ocean
Tacoma?
game. I actually haven't played Tacoma.
Abzu
may be the one. You may be correct.
That's
one I haven't played, but I know a lot of people talk about it as like a zen relaxation, contemplation kind of thing. But anyway, so I'm always down for games to try different things or take on styles of doing things that have been done before but aren't done often.
That's not to say that, going back to your comment about Shadow of the Colossus and when you played it not being into it, that's absolutely like valid. I think there are a lot of games that you can look at and, you know, agree that it is something to behold and something to play, but at the same time you yourself, it's just not for you. And I think it's okay to say that sometimes. I've always had it in my head that before I write something up, I need to at least try it again. And I've done that plenty of times. Like, you know, I use this example all the time, but Fallout 3, it took me, I think, 3 times when it came out, playing it in order to actually, like, just for it to click. And And there have been definitely games that I've played and I've just, it's not for me. It's cool. I understand it. And, all the hype it gets is great, but it's just not for me, and I'll go on to the next one. So yeah, I mean, if you ever try Shadow of the Colossus again and you're in a different state of mind and you end up liking it, awesome. But, if you decide it's not for you, then it's not for you. So,
And I think maybe not to continue on for this a whole much longer, but I think the giant expanse is almost becoming like not just the isolation game, but also like the giant expanse, you're by yourself for a long time, is becoming sort of a genre in and of itself. Breath of the Wild had a lot of sequences where it was the wild. It was you, It was Link, and you got to go this direction, and then you sort of just found your way there, which was amazing. Red Dead Redemption 2,
oh yeah,
still to this day, like I'm never gonna forget hunting the white Arabian horse that is up in the mountains, or not hunting, trying to track it. And it's just like you're setting up camp, your beard grows, you're eating the peaches and whatever else that Arthur has in his bag, and it's just so intensely like intimate, but at the same time, obviously Red Dead 2 has a ton of characters and a ton of dialogue and stuff like that, so it's not the entirety of the game. Journey is another game that I neglected to mention that is like that. But anyway, okay, is there anything else you'd like to say before we move to news here?
No sir, we are good.
We want to give a massive shout out to the sponsors of this episode. They have been silently supporting us since the beginning, and we felt it was time to give them some love. The like and share buttons have been at our side since episode 1 of the podcast. They can be found right beneath this episode. Please give them a click, it helps us greatly. If you are feeling lucky, click the bell icon to enter for a notification anytime we post new content. You may be surprised by what you get.
A developer called out a player for refunding a game after liking it and completing it. Before Your Eyes is a short first-person narrative adventure developed by Goodbye World Games. The game's story is affected by your own physical blinks, your eye.
Oh, this one. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, and it's tracked by a webcam, apparently. And on Steam, I think you can play without a webcam, but obviously that defeats some of the purpose.
Yes. I believe. Sorry, I was listening to a podcast on the way home, and one of the guys was talking about this. But you can click when you blink, and that will simulate like what you're doing.
Yeah. Well, the premise alone is enough to be interesting. But anyway, so on Twitter, Bella Messix, a dev behind Before Your Eyes, posted an image of a Steam review that said that the game was great, but because this person completed it in an hour and a half, they refunded it. He said on Twitter, quote, "Yep, we made a short game. I think there should be more short games. I think short games shouldn't get refunded for delivering an amazing experience," end quote. The user then repurchased the game, apologized to Messix, and added to the review saying, quote, "Yes, the game is short. It has been an underlying reason, but it has an underlying reason for this. Life itself is short and can be gone in the blink of an eye, which kind of seems to be the point of making the game controlled by blinking in the first place. It's worth your $10, even if you beat the game in enough time. You shouldn't exploit Steam's system and refund it," end quote. So there, I think this is a really interesting story. One, because, man, if you're a developer and you want to call out like a single player, and by single player I mean like one person or one review on Twitter, like I don't know.
That's thin ice.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's not that I think there's that. That's one thing. There's another thing that just, I always go back to that thing that Jeff Kaplan said that we talked about when we first started this podcast. How he's like, how Blizzard was afraid to talk to the community because you have to be pinpoint accurate with your words. And at the same time, when you're pinpoint accurate, people are going to dislike you for the things that you say. Mm-hmm. And so it's this really insane balancing act of being honest and then just taking all the shit that comes your way. So anyway, the point I was trying to make here was, I'm sure I don't know if I would have had the courage to call out somebody on Twitter, because that's just such a scary place. But so there's that. And at the same time, I think refunding games is a fascinating topic that I don't think we've really talked about a whole bunch on the
No,
podcast.
we've definitely had it mentioned in passing, and we never dwelled on it. But there's never been a situation like this, I think.
Mhm.
And I said thin ice because it's true. You don't want to come off as antagonistic to your consumer base. And with this, I think that Bella approached it very tactfully. He stated, "Yeah, we made a short game. This is great, but it doesn't mean that you should refund it by beating it, because just the game. I think it's 2 hours or 2 weeks
Yes,
to
for Steam's
return
refund policy.
under Steam.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I understand that when you quote unquote consume a video game, you're not actively, obviously, it's still there. So this isn't like, I'm going to use this example, and it's not a good one, but like, buying a milkshake,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
eating it, and then, I want my money back. I think it's a bit shameful that you would buy a game, beat it, and then return it, especially on an independent game, because these folks need the money, and they delivered an experience that they hope would stick with you. And who knows, if this gentleman who bought the game, if he was able to, if he kept the game, he could have showed it to his friends or showed it to other people, and they might have bought a copy to show other people. Like, that's the point of it, at least in my eyes, for some of these examples. But I do think that it can possibly create a rotten culture.
Yes. Yeah.
That would, take advantage of a system in place to essentially protect consumers. But
Yeah.
you got people who now will just, plain abuse it.
Mm-hmm. I will admit that, well, not rampant. I definitely have in earlier years of my life, which it feels like I'm admitting to myself that I was once like a, I don't know,
This person,
like a raging, angry, like not, but yeah, I agree pretty much with everything you said. I think so. On one hand, I think we need a way. The industry needs a way to figure out how to make sure that Batman Arkham City doesn't happen again, right? And
Arkham Knight, yeah.
Was it Arkham Knight or Arkham City? Yeah, one of those.
Arkham Knight.
And the problem is that Arkham Knight has happened plenty of times since it spurred the creation of this refund thing with Steam. And so we have to figure out how to fix that. And really, it starts with people and decision making positions, right?
Mm-hmm.
But they're not going to do it because they don't have to. So we have to either figure out some other way or keep advocating for them to do their goddamn job. The other thing is, this wasn't made so that shorter games become vulnerable to people in this way, right? And I don't want to. This person that played the game and refunded it. It's like, this isn't about piling on to one person, because I'm sure this is something that happens all the time. And the person also fessed up about it, which it takes just as much courage to go on social media and say, I was wrong, right? So I think it's a good story all the way around. Don't get me wrong. But it was not made to be taken advantage of in this way either. So you have sort of both extremes. And I don't know really what the answer is. And I think it brings up a lot of really fascinating questions, because like, what is what is a game? And what does buying it mean? I think Heather Alexandra wrote a piece for Kotaku a long time ago that was like, what does it mean when you buy a game? Like, what does that action imply? Because games are so varied, and even like commercial games, right? Like, I feel like when you talk about like commercial movies that meet the public, I feel like that's a more uniform market. And I would assume that's the same thing with like pop culture music. But even pop culture video games, I think, display a diversity that I don't think a lot of other like art entertainment forms have. Because tomorrow, if Gone Home 2 was announced, and everybody knows Gone Home 2 would be, you know, a 2 to 3 hour experience, people would be hyped like there's no tomorrow, right?
Yeah.
In the same way that if, you know, God of War Ragnarok trailer dropped tomorrow, people would be just as excited. And yet these are two completely different experiences with wholly different like input input styles and stories to tell and paces. But they're both video games, you know. And I just don't think you have sort of that diversity on in other like entertainment areas, right? And I may be wrong about that, but I really don't think so. Like, I don't know. I really don't think there is. Like you obviously in music you have like niche genres and you have experimental stuff, and in every medium there's like experimental stuff, but how much, I think more so in video games, experimental stuff reaches that pop culture center, right? Like Stanley Parable, right? Like the Stanley Parable, like, anyway, I'm going off on too many tangents now. But the point I'm trying to get back to is that's what makes video games really complicated when we talk about refunding them and talk about them as products, because like questions like, well, you know, what does it mean when you buy a game is super complicated, and what you can expect from it. And we've railed on this show before about the ridiculousness of thinking that like $10 should equal 1 hour of gameplay,
right.
which is just absurd to think about.
And I think at the end of the day, when I spend my money on a game, if I beat it or however long I play it, the first question that always pops into my head was this worth my time and money? And for me, I've always, if I at least get some amount of enjoyment out of it, then it was worth it. You mentioned Journey earlier, and I think that is the most perfect example of a game that cost a certain amount that you can beat in 2 hours and have the most incredible experience like you've ever had. Yeah. And I paid $30 for that, $30 or $40 for Journey, which is a 2 hour game. Like it is start to finish, like at least 2 hours, give or take. And that was such an incredible experience. And I still, people still to this day, you know, think about that game or talk about it or, you know, share their experiences with it, meeting somebody else in the game. And for $30, that's well worth it, you know. The biggest bad example to point to would obviously be Cyberpunk. And I did refund that game.
Oh wow.
I did, but I vowed to buy that game again, though.
Okay.
when it gets to the point that it is, because I did feel that even though with the mistakes that it's made, I still feel like that game is good. There's good in that game. It just unfortunately released a little too late. But yeah, I think that having a return policy for games is an excellent consumer practice, but it needs to not be abused in this sort of way.
Yeah. And Cyberpunk. Continue.
And I don't feel bad about refunding a game. And there's lots of different I remember when I got my Oculus Quest 2, I bought Population 1, and I played it for a bit. And I definitely enjoyed it, but I returned it because I had to sit there for a second, and I was like, am I really going to like jump in all the time and play this game? I don't have anybody to play with, et cetera, et cetera. Since then, several friends have gotten a Quest 2, and I've repurchased it again because I now have people to play with, and it's absolutely worth my money. So yeah, there's so many examples and angles to go about this conversation, but man, yeah.
Yeah, your example of Cyberpunk, I think, is a good one because and this is another way where games are unlike a lot of other, like, how if you bought Taylor Swift's new album, which I think she has a new album, I don't know, but let's say she does for the sake of argument, it would be ridiculous if you got her new album and like 3 of the songs don't play, one of the songs like only plays halfway, like, and it was fundamentally broken, right? It happens all the time with video games. And but if you go to a store and you buy a refrigerator and the refrigerator is broken, well, it's like, of course you can return the fridge. But at the same time, it's like, a developer may argue that, okay, well, the fridge isn't going to be fixed over time. A game will. So I think it's a really complicated discussion, and we should understand that, while understanding that this isn't a complicated part of that discussion. This is a pretty simple open and shut case.
Yeah, the case itself is simple. The discussion is not, because when you stated about Cyberpunk, it's like, oh man, okay, so there's another sentence that you use that opened up another topic that we could go into, and so this is just
and I
Ouroboros
honestly
discussion.
And I honestly don't have my own opinions like set in stone. This is one of those things where it's like, ask me tomorrow and maybe I come up differently, you know? So don't take anything I said set in stone.
It's still an evolving policy. It's still an evolving, choice that we have to make as we go on. It's just, we got to find situations like this to call out people and say, well, hey, you beat the game, why did you return it? It should be worth your time to keep it. If you buy a game and you like it, keep it. Like, that's
yeah, so it's definitely, so to reiterate, definitely a complex discussion, but this is not a complex part of that discussion. This is pretty simple. Like, this is a no. Yeah. This is a no. But other things like Cyberpunk, I think, present a much more complicated facet. Are we ready to move on?
Yeah, let's go.
Speaking of Cyberpunk, CD Projekt Red has vowed to stick with Cyberpunk 2077. Speaking to Reuters, joint CEO Adam Kaczynski, joint CEO of CD Projekt Red, Adam Kaczynski said, quote, "I don't see an option to shelve Cyberpunk 2077. We are convinced that we can bring the game to such a state that we can be proud of it and therefore successfully sell it for years to come." Another interesting line, which I'm reading straight from the story, the Reuters story is written by Reuters staff. So there is no
one person.
There is no like one specific author behind this. So just Reuters in general. But anyway, quote, Kaczynski said the company is looking for acquisition opportunities as it embarks on a fundamental change to be able to develop 2 high-budget games in parallel from next year. Acquisitions would not be aimed at boosting financial results. It would not need to be restricted to any geographical locations. He also said that since hostile takeovers cannot be fully ruled out in the games industry, the company took steps a few years ago to reduce the risk of becoming a takeover target, including capping shareholders' voting rights to 20%, end quote, which I thought was a really interesting little tidbit.
Yeah,
there.
that's neat. Yeah.
So one thing is, I think it's strange that this quote it made the rounds, and I guess it's fine, but it is one of those like weird quotes. It reminds me of, if you don't mind me going off on a little bit of a sports tangent here. So every year, I disappoint you. I apologize.
Go for it.
Every year,
I like sports.
Every year there is a day, College Football National Signing Day, right? And it's when coaches like sign the talent, the high school players that they recruited to their teams, right? And there's this ongoing joke, if you listen and read stuff, because every year, every coach really loves the recruits and the talent they brought in, right? But it's like, no coach is going to go, oh, we got shit talent this year, our team's going to suck. Like no coach is like, we didn't get any of the recruits. I'm going to get fired. Spring ball's going to be terrible. Like no coach is going to argue that, right? So of course, like every coach is going and signing recruits, talking about it's the greatest thing of all time. So in the same vein, like of course, it would be shocking if he said, well, Cyberpunk had a good run. Like I think it would be
Our business relationship with Cyberpunk has ended.
exactly. We're selling this thing up to Bethesda. See you guys later. Like it would be utterly like it would be chaos. It would be the destruction of Western civilization if you said something like that. So it's one of those quotes where it just like I don't know why it had to be said. So I just find that interesting. But the other thing is I wonder how often companies anticipate hostile takeovers, and I would assume that's something that companies in every industry are watching out for. But it seems like it's a pretty common thing in the games industry. Maybe even more than normal, but I don't know for sure. Well, we had Ubisoft. We had
Ubisoft was the last one I remember.
Hostile take. Well, again, we're going. Strictly speaking, hostile takeover. You may be right, but like in terms of one company, like exerting control over another, like Ubisoft, Activision, Blizzard. There was what was the company?
Codemasters and EA.
Codemasters and EA is one. What was the company that was developing? We talked about this story a while ago with Kerbal Space Program 2. And like another company purchased
Microsoft
them.
bought them, I think.
Something like that. And a lot of the developers of Kerbal Space Program 2 started to leave because you had this other like so I don't know. So I feel like it's something that maybe not a lot, but when it does happen, it's high profile. So it's interesting that they say that they're anticipating it, or that not that they're anticipating it that it's about to happen, but just that they've planned for it to happen. I just thought it was an interesting tidbit that I don't know, is a little bit of an insight into the industry. Do you have anything you would like to say about this?
I wonder what type of. I mean, obviously they would acquire smaller studios. I assume CDPR has the money for it. I mean, Witcher's still making hand over fist. They have deals with Netflix for the show. I think, right? Them and the author. I think they
Well, that's a good question. I don't know. I
don't know enough about it, so I'm gonna stop talking. And then of course, I mean, we all know, although Cyberpunk has problems, it made all of its money back and some. So yeah, I mean, they could definitely buy some smaller studios to help with some two big budget titles starting next year. So they better work on Cyberpunk fast. But I do think it's smart to cap shareholders' voting rights 20%. I think that's really cool. To kind of avoid that hostile takeover situation from happening. I think that is a neat idea to protect themselves.
Yeah, and I guess sorry, continue.
Sorry, I don't have anything else to say on that. I'm not knowledgeable enough in the field to, say anything else.
I would really like to know what other companies have something like that. Just because, to go back for a second, just because the stories, one of the ongoing narratives of the game industry is how many times people leave, not because they want to leave, but because they're tired of putting up with the bullshit of like corporate, barking down a certain tree, and then they just get tired of doing something like that, so they take off, right? Yeah. And so I wonder how many you have people that start studios because they don't want to deal with like crunch, or they want to try and change the culture. So I wonder how many of these studios start up, and one of the things they want to make sure is there's not a whole lot of like top-down unilateral decision making. That's really vague, I know. I wonder, this would be like a Jason Schreier thing. Like, hey, how many studios worry about this, and how many studios started in recent years have tried to anticipate this kind of thing? Go report, come back to me in 6 weeks.
Sure.
Anyway.
Also, I kind of feel like he wouldn't have said that unless someone is actively trying.
You think so?
Like, well, that feels weird to just kind of say that.
Well, so it's not a quote. It's a quote of the story. So we don't exactly specifically know what he said.
Okay.
But anyway, yeah, I don't want to dig too. I just think it's
Sure.
really interesting. Is all. We'll move off it. We'll move off it. Quest 2 is getting official wireless support. This was announced in a blog post. Airlink is a streaming technology that allows you to play PC VR games on Quest 2 via Wi-Fi. Oculus says if you have a strong and secure Wi-Fi connection and play within 20 feet of your router, you should be good to go. Oculus also says you'll want a 5G network on an AC or AX router, which is hardlined to your PC, and make sure your PC meets the link requirements. Oculus is also giving the option to enable 120 hertz refresh rate on Quest 2, and developers will soon be able to ship apps on the Quest Store that run at 120 natively, which is amazing for VR, because you want as many of those refreshes as you can get, as many of those frames as you can get in VR. Okay, so this is interesting, because you already have virtual desktop, which is
Virtual desktop,
which is like the third party. Is virtual desktop third party, correct?
It was originally third party, and now not Microsoft, Oculus within the last 2 weeks has changed their outlook. No, that's not the right thing to say. Has basically become friendly with both SideQuest and
Interesting
virtual desktop. So SideQuest games can now be purchased through Oculus.
Oh, I didn't know that.
There's no. I mean, there's still other ones it's a weird third step. So there are still some things you need to use SideQuest in order to get. Like, you can't just get Doom 3 VR. Like, you'll have to do the SideQuest stuff to get Doom 3 VR.
Mm-hmm.
But there's some stuff that is on SideQuest that is now on Quest App Labs, which is what they call it, and you can just grab it from that. It's a bit confusing. And then virtual desktop, Oculus was kind of just like, yeah, sure, whatever, go ahead. So, but now they're doing this, which I guess we'll have to see how it works compared to virtual desktop, because virtual desktop is incredible. Like, it works wonderfully. I just wish that I had a good enough computer to play some of these games. But yeah, I did not notice anything peculiar about my gameplay, and except for the fact that my computer is just not strong enough to play Half-Life Alyx good enough. Like, it can play it, but not smoothly.
Yeah, virtual desktop is something that I've actually never tried before, so I don't know if my PC could handle it or not. But I think wireless, a headset without wires, a wireless headset, is a big deal. Because that removes a lot of, like, the fewer things you have on your head when you have a VR headset on, the better. And my biggest gripe about the Quest, which a lot of people just hated, as if I said LeBron James was the greatest basketball player of all time. There's another stupid sports reference. Was this idea that I didn't like the Quest as much because the audio was bad, and I didn't want to like fiddle around with third-party headphones, because the Rift's headphones were phenomenal, and the Index's headphones are, well, they're not really headphones, whatever. The things that produce audio, those are really good too. Those are creepy good. That's the kind of stuff that every now and then I play a game on the Index and I like take off my headset because I think someone walks into the room. But nope, it was just an effect of the sound. So that's all part of the experience, and that was one of my big gripes about the Quest 2, was it was great everywhere, but the audio was just such a letdown, because it was like you just had two cell phones strapped up here, It was not, I'm not a huge fan of it. Some people, it's just a personal thing. Some people aren't that bothered, but me, it's like when you have the Rift and you can feel the punch of weapons and stuff like that, and then you move to Quest 2 and it just feels a little plasticky. Not a huge fan. But anyway, if you can remove a wire and do wireless stuff, it's fantastic. And because the Quest 2 is self-contained and you play games just contained within the headset, you can experience that. And it's great. It's fantastic. It's wonderful. Yeah. But playing high-end PC games wirelessly, that's that would be something really special, because
Mhm.
now you're getting a wider variety. Now you're getting most likely better visuals, and you have a PC, which means you can do all kinds of stuff.
Yep.
So that's sort of the next big thing, and if this works well, that's a big deal. And you know, as much as I hate Facebook because they're a god awful company, they're really trying a lot of stuff with VR. So their VR department's great, I guess.
Yeah.
When the effect Facebook has on democracy around the world, what they do for VR, I'm a little bit more open to that.
They let me shoot some things with goggles. Cool.
Yeah, let me do that. Maybe I'll let them ruin democracy in countries all over the world. Who knows? Okay, is there anything else you would like to say about this before we move?
No. I think it's cool tech. I hope it works well. If it does, I'm gonna be a little mad that I spent money on virtual desktop, but whatever. It's all good. It was like $10. It was on sale. Whatever. I couldn't care
Do
less.
we really need to get back to the refund discussion? I don't think so.
No.
Okay, we have tidbits, including an Oculus Story.
Yeah, sure. Well, let's go into this Oculus Story. Today was the Resident Evil showcase, which they showed off more of Resident Evil 8 and some other projects for Resident Evil, including a surprise announcement of a Resident Evil 4 VR version that will be exclusive to the Oculus Quest 2. It will not be on Oculus Quest 1. It won't be on Rift. It won't be on PC VR, just Oculus Quest 2, which there are people very upset about that, but they can go shove it. Of course, it will be in a first-person perspective. There's been some retooling of certain gameplay sections. The item menu, which was the old briefcase that you can like move things around, looks different. You can now actually type on a typewriter, which is funny. But the executive producer over on Reddit, I'm not sure if he is the executive producer of the game or just a producer at the Oculus Studios. Just his flair says executive producer. Stated, and I quote, "It is so fun to revisit this title in a new way," and I'm paraphrasing this next part. "You have no idea how hard it is to stay tight-lipped about this and all the other stuff we are not ready to show yet." So I hope they have some cool surprises up their sleeve for Resident Evil 4, which is a strange game. Sorry, real quick tangent. I make fun of the fact that people make fun of Skyrim so much for being ported as many times it has, but nobody gives Resident Evil 4 any shit for how many times it's been ported. Yes, it is a great game, but also Skyrim is a great game as well. Like, stop acting like it's not at least a good to great game. Anyways, there's a reason why it keeps getting remade. Anyways, next tidbit. This one is straddling the line of rumor here, but we might have a possible Metal Gear Solid announcement incoming. The official Metal Gear Solid Twitter account started interacting with another account named Tom Olsen. This account role plays as an NPC from Metal Gear Solid 2 who, quote unquote, works at Big Shell, the base in Metal Gear Solid 2, where it's set. All he does is post pictures from Metal Gear Solid 2 and like first person perspective pictures, and you make silly comments about him or about whatever is going on at that time. The account has only been around for a couple of weeks. It was made in April, but he made a post and the Metal Gear Solid account responded to him, also in role play, saying, "Tom, we talked about this. Please check your codec each morning for meeting updates and evacuations in case of PMC incursions. And we have visitors coming next week, so finish cleaning the vents and make sure the flags are all hung properly, but do not touch the C4 this time." Also, this Tom character has also been talking about having visitors next week for some reason. So there's, of course, rumors going on that we may have some possible Metal Gear info next week. But, you know, they could just be accounts being cheeky with each other, but it is strange that a brand new account would be very easily talking to a established account like the Metal Gear Solid official. So
Yes.
we'll see what happens. Multiple parties are quote unquote interested in buying Square Enix. Bloomberg Japan reports that multiple parties are inquiring the purchase of Square Enix, and that was just announced before we started here today.
Oh, wow. Okay.
It is important to note, though, that there's a difference between companies being interested in purchasing a company and a company putting themselves up for sale, which Square Enix has not done. Let's, get that straight. And Matt Piscatella, who we get our MPD numbers from, he's the executive director of the MPD group, has stated, and I quote, "Just about every big publisher is continuously running evaluations on potential acquisitions, mergers, or partnerships. I would do a dozen of slate revenue scenarios every year. Sometimes something happens. Almost always it doesn't. So although this is making a blip in the news, it's very possible it could just be nothing."
Okay.
And that's it.
Interesting.
That's tidbits.
Resident Evil 4 VR is just it. I can't contain my excitement for that. Not only because I've never played Resident Evil 4, but I mean, slow paced. Any game that exists right now, any genre that is slow paced, is so primed to transition into VR. It's insane. Tactical shooters, Onward, like I cannot express, and I haven't played Onward in a while actually, but I cannot express how intense, immersive, and satisfying Onward is, right? Yeah. And it's one of the best tactical shooters ever made, and it's a VR game, and there's nothing like it. And it's because slow-paced shooters, like a tactical shooter, fits into VR so well. And I think we've even talked about this. Slow-paced survival horror would fit VR so perfectly, and
yeah,
I'm
absolutely
so happy that they're doing it.
And although I joke about people should be making fun of Resident Evil for being ported so much, the game is excellent when it came out, and I've replayed it several times throughout the years. Only because it is in VR, I am so excited to revisit this game. Like, it's on sale right now on PS4 for $7, and I could buy it right now and play it again. But the prospect of it being in VR is so cool that I would love to try it out. And I think this is great, and I think this should happen. Not just Resident Evil 4, but there are so many games from our past that could, now we'll use this phrase very, very lightly, easily be transitioned to VR. That I mean, could you imagine a Ghost Recon in VR or a SOCOM in VR? Or
you're speaking my language.
we're so we're getting Splinter Cell in VR.
I know.
And that didn't excite me until I just thought about it right now. Like, I thought about Black in VR. Like, if you remember that first person shooter, yes. And there's so, like I said, there's so many prospects of a cool VR game. And I would like to see, I would like to see XCOM in VR. Like, what if you're the commander, looking down and you can point your troops where to go and stuff like that. I think there's an untapped potential to bring those back, and we're seeing some of it. I mean, obviously Resident Evil 4 and Doom 3 just came out, and I think some developers can dig into their old IPs or make other deals that we can get. Hell, Nintendo Switch had an indie showcase yesterday, and they announced a House of the Dead remake. And I have no idea why that's not coming to the Quest. Like, light gun rail shooters, give them all to me, man.
One of the my train of thought it started and it just frickin' sank to the bottom of the ocean. You were talking. I think a game that can make a really easy transition, and maybe this is only me that believes it, is the original Fear. I think the original Fear could, and it's specifically because in Boneworks has a mechanic where you can slow down time. And so imagine slowing down time enough that you can see bullets move, and it's VR, so you can dodge bullets while firing back, right? Which is 1,000% possible. Like, if you put together Super Hot and Boneworks, there, you got it. That you got it. It's perfect.
Fear is just Boneworks scary. Exactly. I mean, Super Hot scary.
Exactly. And I can't even imagine how amazing that would be. I may have to learn how to develop games and then do a Kickstarter or something. But anyway, but there was, so what was the second tidbit again? Because I thought I wanted to say something about
the possible Metal Gear Solid announcement.
Oh, so Konami really makes me disappointed sometimes, and by sometimes I mean every waking moment of my life. And And the best thing they could possibly do is get rid of the IP and just give it to somebody who's just going to try something with it. Just anything.
There's no shame there is no shame in licensing your property out to other companies to make a game out of it. Like, ever since Starlink, I think Nintendo are a bunch of idiots for not letting Ubisoft make a Star Fox game. Sega made an F-Zero game that was very good. Mercury Steam remade the Metroid 2 game, which was, fairly good. There's so many, and all these franchises, Metal Gear Solid, Silent Hill, Castlevania, like, Konami has heavy hitter names to their company, and they're not using them, and it's a shame.
Yes.
And they could easily let someone else do the heavy work and reap the benefits of it.
Yes, they could go 1,000% John Lovitz, and I'm reaping all the benefits.
Absolutely.
A thought I did have, though, one of the more interesting, as we talk about things that can make a transition into VR, so we're ping-ponging between different topics here, but one of the more interesting experiences I've ever experienced in VR was Senua's Sacrifice, because they have the experimental VR mode. That is it's experimental, so it's a lot to take in. The perspective will kick me in the gut a few times, because it's not, like, it's experimental, so I don't want to be too redundant, but there are a lot of things that they try to push limits and do some stuff, and it doesn't quite work. But that's really cool. Senua's Sacrifice in VR is really cool, because it's like you're a drone. Senua isn't like Senua. You perceive Senua as being bigger than you are, right? So in some VR games, when you're, like, standing face to face with a person, it's like that person in the game is as tall as you are. In Senua's Sacrifice, it feels as though you're a drone following her around, and she is bigger than your body, if that makes any sense at all. Which is kind of confusing, but also really freaking cool when you get into combat and some of the visuals and the storytelling. It's still one of the cooler experiences, but because it's experimental and it pushes some boundaries, I wasn't able to get all the way through it, because it really does kick you on the stomach. But because you mentioned XCOM, Senua's Sacrifice has a mode where it's almost like a top-down, like an action game. I'm not sure how to put it. Where she goes from sort of this big
a Diablo-esque.
Kind of Diablo-esque, yeah. And she becomes like a action figure sized, and your camera in the sky looking down. They have a setting for that. Sure. When I turned that on, that one kicked me in the face. Like, I turned that one on. I was like, oh, Jesus.
That's a large misconception when it comes to VR is I think people assume that every VR game has to be first person, and you can do some really cool tricks with it not being first person. Ghost Giant is a good example. I love that game. It's very storybook-esque. It's very, very nice to go through, but also a bit depressing. There's Moss. Moss is another great game to go through. But yeah, no, that's very good examples. And yeah, there's lots of things that can be done with VR.
Yep.
And real quick before I got nothing else to say besides this next thing, but if you are interested, I know you said you're sick of the game, Tyler, but GTFO apparently has a new VR mod.
Yes.
To it.
So. Oh, it does? Oh, I did not know that. I was saying yes because GTFO was going to release a new rundown coming up soon. They announced a new rundown.
It has
which is something we may have to work on, but anyway, that's neither here nor there right now.
It has a native PC VR mod, full motion controls, 4-player co-op in VR. So.
Really?
Uh-huh.
Interesting. Okay, well, anyway, got lots of food for thought.
I'll send you the link.
Thank you very much. Follow us on Twitter and Facebook at The Gaming Discourse. Go to our YouTube channel, YouTube/Gaming Discourse, where we post videos. Go watch the Alien Isolation video. New review of Paradise Lost here in the next few days. And we will see you next week. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.